Hello everyone, welcome to today's story. What if a simple DNA test revealed a truth that could change everything you thought you knew about your life? In today's emotional journey, Diep and James face a crisis that goes beyond illness. A test result that shatters their reality and alters their future forever. Can Diep overcome the health challenges she's facing? And what happens when the DNA test confirms something no one expected, that the child she carries is James's? How will this shocking revelation impact their love, their trust, and their future together? Stay tuned until the end, because this story is full of twists you won't see coming. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and help us reach 1,000 followers. Join us for more stories of love, secrets, and life-changing moments. The hospital room is cold, the sterile white walls casting a dull light on everything around. The steady beep of the machines fills the silence, a constant reminder of the fragile reality they now find themselves in. James sits motionless by Diep's bed, his fingers lightly touching hers, as if afraid the moment he lets go, she will disappear. Her breath is shallow, each rise and fall of her chest a silent struggle. She's no longer the woman full of life he knows, and the uncertainty that fills the air is suffocating. The doctor's voice cuts through the silence, too calm, too composed. "She'll be fine," he says, but the words feel empty, just words. James doesn't trust them. His mind replays the moment she collapsed, the suddenness of it, the way her body crumpled into his arms like a fragile paper doll. It was too fast, too unexpected. He runs a hand through his hair, the weight of the situation settling heavily on his shoulders. There is nothing he can do but wait, but the fear gnaws at him relentlessly. "I'm here, Diep," he whispers, his voice hoarse, trying to convince himself as much as her. Her eyes flutter open, and she looks at him with a soft, almost apologetic expression. "James, I'm okay," she murmurs, though the tremor in her voice betrays her attempt at strength. He smiles back, but it feels hollow. His mind races with thoughts of what could be wrong, what could happen. "No, you're not," he thinks, but he doesn't say it out loud. The silence in the room speaks louder than anything he could ever voice. The hospital room is quiet, save for the occasional rustle of the nurses passing by, each carrying out their work with mechanical precision. James is no longer sitting at the edge of Diep's bed. Now, he's beside her, his hand gently lifting a glass of water to her lips, his touch tender, almost reverent. Diep takes a slow sip, her eyes meeting his for a brief moment before she looks away. The silence between them is heavy, the unspoken tension palpable. He's trying to keep things light, but beneath his calm exterior, there's a storm raging inside him. The nagging fear he can't shake, the constant worry that something is terribly wrong, that it's more than just an illness. But he can't show it, not to her. She needs his strength now more than ever. "How do you feel?" he asks softly, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might break the fragile peace of the room. Diep turns her head to face him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to find the answer to the question she hasn't asked herself. "I'm okay," she says, but there's a hint of uncertainty in her voice, and James catches it immediately. His heart aches. He wants to say something to ease her fears, but the words don't come. He wishes he could promise her everything would be fine, but he knows deep down that he's not sure himself. The truth is, he's afraid. Afraid of what the doctors might say. afraid of losing her before they've had a chance to truly be together. The room feels smaller now, filled with unsaid words and quiet fears. The hours drag on, the weight of uncertainty growing heavier with every passing moment. James remains at Diep's side, watching her closely as she drifts in and out of sleep. The hospital room, though filled with soft murmurs and the occasional distant chatter, feels overwhelmingly isolating. He watches her breathing, steady now, but the stillness of her form only amplifies the unsettling quiet inside him. A nurse enters the room with a clipboard, breaking the silence briefly. She speaks to James in a low voice, her words not offering the comfort he craves. "We'll need to run more tests," she says, her tone clinical but kind. "We're still not sure what's causing the fainting. The results should be in tomorrow." He nods, but the moment she leaves, the fear inside him swells. The air feels thick with tension, and he knows that there are no assurances left. His mind begins to race with all the things that could be wrong with her, each possibility darker than the last. What if it's something serious? What if it's cancer? What if he can't lose her like this? Not now, not when they've only just started building something together. Diep stirs slightly, her eyes opening slowly. She's aware of the change in his mood, the subtle shift in his expression. "James," she says, her voice barely a whisper. "What's wrong? You're not telling me something." He looks at her, trying to mask the panic swirling inside. "It's nothing," he says, his voice faltering slightly. Just don't worry." But she sees through him. She always does. And deep down, they both know that something is not right. The hospital's sterile atmosphere remains unchanged, yet inside, the tension feels as if it could break at any moment. James has been holding Diep's hand, the warmth of her skin a small comfort amidst the chaos of his thoughts. He tries to remain focused on her, but the unspoken worry is impossible to ignore. The waiting has been unbearable. Every minute that passes without answers only deepens his anxiety. When the doctor enters the room, he carries a clipboard, his expression unreadable. "We've received the results from the DNA test," he says, his voice steady, yet carrying a weight James didn't expect. "We tested for a number of things, including the paternity of the child." The word paternity hangs in the air, sharp and unexpected. Diep looks at him, her face a mirror of James's confusion. Neither of them anticipated this. The doctor continues, his words slow and deliberate. "The results are in. The child in Diep's womb is yours, Mr. James." The shock hits like a wave. For a moment, James feels as though the world has shifted beneath him, the ground unstable. He wasn't prepared for this. This revelation that completely changes everything. The child, the one Diep has carried in silence, now undeniably linked to him in a way he hadn't considered. His gaze flickers to Diep, who looks as stunned as he feels. She meets his eyes, the uncertainty in her own expression mingled with something else. Fear, relief, perhaps. And a question lingers between them, unspoken but clear. How does this change everything? James swallows hard, his breath shaky as he processes the news. A new weight, a new responsibility is now on his shoulders. But despite the shock, a strange warmth floods his chest. His heart racing not with fear, but with something else. They are bound by more than just love now. They are bound by blood. The hospital room, once filled with soft murmurs and the hum of machines, now feels oppressively still. Diep lies back against the pillow, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her gaze unfocused as if trying to escape the reality that has just been thrust upon them. The DNA test has changed everything. The child is James, a truth that was unexpected, yet in some way inevitable. But the weight of the situation feels unbearable now, amplified by the uncertainty that still lingers about her health. James watches her, unable to hide the flicker of concern in his eyes. His own thoughts are racing. The shock of the revelation still hasn't fully settled, but it brings with it a deeper worry. Diep's health, her fragility, her vulnerability, has been hanging over them. And now, with the truth of the child's paternity, the stakes feel even higher. He can't lose her. Not now. Not when there is so much more to fight for. She doesn't say anything at first, but the silence speaks volumes. Diep finally breaks it, her voice barely above a whisper. "James, what if I can't get better?" Her eyes are clouded with unshed tears, but she blinks them back, trying to appear stronger than she feels. "What if I don't have time to be the mother I want to be for him?" His heart tightens at the question, the raw vulnerability in her voice cutting deeper than anything he could have imagined. His throat feels tight, and for a moment, he struggles to speak. He wants to promise her everything, tell her that she's going to be fine, but the words catch in his throat. He can't promise that, not when the uncertainty hangs so heavily over them. But he doesn't have to say anything. He simply reaches for her hand, holding it tightly, silently telling her that he will be there, no matter what. "Don't think like that," he finally says, his voice steady, though his heart trembles. "We'll face this together." But in the silence that follows, Diep's fears remain, unspoken but impossible to ignore. The room feels quieter than ever, the weight of the past few hours pressing down on them both. James sits by Diep's side, watching her with quiet concern. The doctors have given their assurances. Though the road ahead is uncertain, there's hope. The early detection of her condition, the careful treatment, all of it points to a chance. But even in the face of this possibility, the fear lingers. It coils around them both, a silent presence that won't be dismissed so easily. He watches her closely, her pale face drawn with exhaustion, the flickering of worry still evident in her eyes. The uncertainty is in her every gesture, in the slight tremor of her hand as she reaches for the cup of water he's offering. He knows she's trying to stay strong, to hold on to hope, but the weight of her doubts is impossible to escape. "How do you feel?" James asks softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Diep's gaze flickers up to meet his, a hesitant smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Better," she replies, but the way she says it makes it clear that she's not entirely convinced. The small lie, meant to reassure him perhaps, hangs in the air, fragile and unspoken. James wants to tell her that everything will be okay, that she has nothing to worry about. But the truth is, he doesn't know. No one does, and the fear he's been holding in his chest feels like a heavy stone weighing him down. "I'll be here, Diep," he says, his words firm, unwavering. "No matter what happens, we'll get through this, together." She nods slowly, her eyes softening. It's not a guarantee, nothing in life ever is, but in that moment they both hold on to the fragile thread of hope that, perhaps, just perhaps, they will be able to fight this together. The late afternoon sun filters gently through the hospital window, casting soft shadows across the room. James and Diep sit together in silence. the world outside slipping away as they share this quiet, fragile moment. The hectic, fearful days seem distant now, replaced by the tranquility of a single moment in time, where nothing exists except for the two of them. Diep leans against the pillow, her face illuminated by the golden light, her eyes searching out the faint traces of hope that linger in the air. She had been so afraid, so consumed by the thought that she might not make it through this, that she might never get to see her child grow up to share a life with James. But something about the stillness of this moment, a moment where time seems to pause, makes her realize how much she has yet to experience. She's still here, and that in itself is a gift. James notices a change in her, the small shift in her posture, the way she now looks at the world with a slightly softer gaze. He feels it too, the shift from fear to a quiet acceptance. There's a sense of peace settling over them both, the calm after the storm. "Do you see that?" James asks, his voice low as he points toward the window, where the sun is beginning to dip lower on the horizon, bathing everything in warm orange and purple hues. Diep turns her head to look, a gentle smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "It's beautiful," she says softly. "It is," he agrees, his voice full of emotion. "But you know what's even more beautiful? The fact that we're here together, and we still have time to make more memories." She nods, her heart swelling with a quiet joy. Time. That's all we really have, isn't it? The sunset deepens, its colors painting the sky as the two of them sit in the calm, side by side. The future remains uncertain, but in this moment they both understand that love, in its purest form, is what will carry them through. And as they sit there, basking in the quiet peace of the present, they know that whatever happens, they will face it together.
Trong khi tình yêu lên tiếng, hành trình cảm xúc của Diệp và James qua cơn khủng hoảng sức khỏe, Diệp nhập viện khi đột ngột ngất xỉu. Trong khi cô điều trị, bạn trai luôn ở bên cạnh, chăm sóc, đồng hành cùng cô qua những cơn bất an giữa lúc khó khăn. Một kết quả xét nghiệm ADN tiết lộ rằng đứa trẻ mà Diệp mang trong bụng chính là con của James. Lúc làm thay đổi hoàn toàn mọi thứ, Diệp phải đối mặt với nỗi sợ hãi về sức khỏe của mình và khả năng làm mẹ, trong khi James cũng luôn giấu kín nỗi lo riêng của mình. Cả hai cùng học cách trân trọng từng khoảnh khắc bên nhau, tìm thấy hy vọng dù trong những thời điểm tối tăm nhất.